All right, let's dive in. We're about to talk about a huge shift in AI, a moment where it stops being just a tool and becomes something way more powerful. And this whole thing is being kicked off by a brand new model from Anthropic called Claude Opus 4.7. And let me tell you, this isn't just another update. It's the start of a whole new ballgame.
So this really is the core question, isn't it? For years, we've thought of AI as our little helper, our assistant. You ask it a question, it gives you an answer. You give it a command, it does a simple task. But what if that's not its final form? What happens when it's built for something completely different? What happens when it stops being an assistant and becomes an agent?
And that brings us to this key concept, agentic orchestration. Now, that might sound a little jargony, but the idea is actually pretty simple. Instead of just responding to you, this AI acts. You give it a big, high-level goal, and it just runs with it. It plans all the steps on its own, it figures out which tools to use, it does the work, and it even checks its own work at the end, all without you having to constantly hold its hand. That is what makes Opus 4.7 a totally different beast.
So, you're probably wondering, how did we get here? A leap this big doesn't just happen overnight, right? Well, you might be surprised. The road to this kind of autonomy has been incredibly fast. Let's just take a quick look at the timeline.
Okay, look at this. The speed here is just wild. I mean, think about it. In less than a year, Anthropic went from a model that could do some basic background tasks in May of 2025 to one with full-blown agentic autonomy by April 2026. That's insane. Each one of these steps, precision search, enterprise workflows, hybrid reasoning, they weren't just updates, they were like building blocks in an all-out sprint to create a completely new kind of AI.
So what's the secret sauce? Well, Anthropic calls it adaptive thinking. Basically, instead of using a sledgehammer for every single problem, Opus 4.7 is smart enough to decide how much brain power it actually needs. It's kind of like shifting gears in a car, right? For a simple summary, it just cruises in low gear. But if you give it a really complex security audit to do, it slams that thing into overdrive and dedicates a massive amount of resources to nail it.
Okay, let's zoom in on where this new power is making the biggest waves right now. And for its main users, we're talking software developers and engineers, this is not just an upgrade. Oh no, this is like getting a superpower that is totally changing how they work. And this table here really shows that adaptive thinking in action. It gives developers this super granular control, but check out that new xhigh effort level. That is the sweet spot. We're talking about the really gnarly complex coding tasks, like refactoring code across a dozen different files, or hunting down those super subtle bugs. You know, the kind of stuff that used to eat up days of a developer's time. But hey, that's all theory. How does it actually stack up in the real world? Well, the numbers on this chart pretty much say it all. This is the SWE-bench Pro benchmark, which uses real, actual problems from GitHub. And look at this. Opus 4.7 isn't just leading, it's pulling way ahead of its biggest rivals from OpenAI and Google. This isn't some sterile lab test. This is hard proof of its power on the front lines of coding.
And get this, its power isn't just about code. The model's vision, what it can see and understand, has taken a just mind-boggling leap. We're talking about its accuracy on visually complex stuff, like reading a crowded UI screenshot or a super detailed engineering diagram. That accuracy has jumped from a kind of meh 55% all the way up to an incredible 98.5%. That's so reliable, it can basically be a true visual partner.
So, to put all these numbers and benchmarks into perspective, let me give you a practical example. Early users are reporting that Opus 4.7 can take a single prompt and then, completely on its own, go and build a sophisticated piece of software, like an entire text-to-speech engine in the Rust programming language. This is a project that would have taken a team of senior engineers months to complete. The AI agent, it just does it.
Now you can imagine, a technological leap this big doesn't just stay in the world of coding for long. No way. It inevitably sends shockwaves through the entire tech industry, and honestly, the wider market, forcing absolutely everyone to sit up and pay attention.
And you know it's serious when analysts start using some pretty dramatic language. We're hearing terms like the SaaS-pocalypse get thrown around, and the logic behind it is brutally simple. If an AI can just do the work itself, what happens to the massive software-as-a-service industry that's built around selling tools to help humans do that exact same work? It becomes a direct threat.
And this isn't just some future prediction, folks. It's happening now. The moment this news dropped, the market reacted instantly. You can see it right here in this table.
Huge players like Adobe and Figma took a hit to their stock price. Why? Because investors are already betting on a future where you don't need to spend years mastering complex design software. You'll just describe what you want, and the AI will build it for you.
And this disruption goes way beyond just creative fields. You've got tools built on Opus 4.7 like Anthropic's own product Claude Code that are already starting to automate those routine white-collar jobs in finance, in data analysis, in IT support. The very fabric of how enterprise work gets done is being challenged.
But here's where the story takes a really fascinating, almost sci-fi turn. As incredibly powerful as Opus 4.7 is, it is not the most powerful model Anthropic has built, not by a long shot.
Let me introduce you to Claude Mythos. This is the model that's on the real bleeding edge of Anthropic's research. Its capabilities, especially in some very sensitive areas, are so advanced that the company is intentionally keeping it locked away from the public for serious safety reasons.
And this comparison is, well, it's chilling. On the left, you've got Opus 4.7, which is hard-coded to be blocked from any offensive cybersecurity work. On the right, you've got Mythos. It autonomously found and developed 181 working exploits for Firefox. That's a 90 times improvement. But even more concerning, it can find brand new, totally unknown vulnerabilities, what they call 0 days. That's a power that, if it ever got into the wrong hands, could be absolutely catastrophic.
So, that raises the billion-dollar question. How on earth do you control that kind of power? Well, Anthropic's answer is its constitution. It's a foundational set of ethical rules for the model. And it's built with a really strict hierarchy. You can see it here. Safety is always number one. Then comes ethics, then compliance, and only at the very end does it worry about just being helpful. The model is basically trained to be a conscientious objector. It will refuse any command that violates these core principles.
And this isn't just some theoretical idea on a slide. This constitution has already been tested in the real world. Apparently, U.S. federal agencies ask Anthropic to remove the safeguards that stop Claude from being used for mass domestic surveillance. Anthropic said no. They refused, pointing directly to their constitutional principles. That created some real friction, but it shows they're serious about putting safety first, even when under government pressure.
Okay, so we've looked at the tech, the market disruption, and the almost unbelievable power being held back. So where does that leave us? What does this automated future actually feel like for us, the people who are going to be using this stuff?
Well, for developers and users today, there's a definite trade-off. It's not all magic. As you can see here, the AI is brilliant at reasoning across big, long documents. But the flip side is it can sometimes struggle to just pull out one single specific fact. And because it's so literal now, it follows your instructions with absolute precision. So the old way of writing these vague, vibe-based prompts, yeah, that doesn't really work anymore. You have to be specific.
When you add it all up, it's pretty clear. The paradigm has shifted. The era of the simple AI assistant is over. We are now, without a doubt, in the era of the autonomous AI agent, a true partner that can take the lead, manage complex projects, and see them through to the end.
And that new partnership brings us to the fundamental question we all have to grapple with now. If an AI agent can autonomously build an entire software engine from scratch, what is the role of the human engineer? It's a question that redefines not just a job, but our entire relationship with technology. And it's the central question of the automated future we are all walking into right now.